What is a time your pet has genuinely surprised you? My cat once pounced on a poisonous snake that was moving towards my son. He pinned it down until one of us got to him and then let the snake go. Kitty got some nice tuna fish that night. Snakes are venomous, not poisonous. Whatever. Gary doesn't care, he just saw something he could pounce on. My favorite cat, now passed, had many strange habits. He played with water in the sink, jumped in the shower when you were taking too long, jumped up and left paw prints on the top of our walls, etc. But the one time he truly surprised me was nearly 16 years ago. I walked into my bedroom and found my wife crying and holding the cat. I asked her what was wrong, and she started to explain. I was tired and decided to take a nap. Butterscotch jumped up, curled up with me, then started kneading my stomach. I didn't understand what she was getting at and told her so. She said that the last time he did that was when she was pregnant with our first daughter 5 years earlier, and that he never did it since. She was convinced that he was trying to tell her that she was pregnant again, and she was crying because she was so happy. She had even made an appointment to get a pregnancy check. Turns out, yep, 4 weeks pregnant. Miss that cat. He made it over 20 years. It's pretty typical of the interactions between my dog, a corgi Sheltie mix, and me. After 8 years of things like this, there's very little that still surprises me with him. A while back, I was playing fetch with him out at a lake. He was starting to get bored, so after getting the ball one time, he carried it with him behind a tree, dropped it, then trotted back to me as if there had been no ball in the first place. I wanted to see what he'd do next, so I got the ball and threw it again. This time, he ran and got it, then proceeded to jump in the lake, swim out 20-30 feet, drop the ball in the water, and swim back. Needless to say, this ended our game of fetch. I think it was probably just your turn to fetch. We used to have a kitty that would go to work with my dad. He worked in a grain terminal where farmers would bring in their grain and they would put it onto train cars and send it out to wherever, mills etc. While dad was working, the kitty would be running around the place chasing mice or playing with the farmers when they came in. The phone rang off the hook around there. Almost every few minutes the phone would ring and someone would answer it. If the secretary was out, one of the other guys would have to come in and answer it. I was just a young lad back then, but one day the phone was ringing and nobody was coming to answer it. The cat jumps onto the desk, flips the receiver off the base station so it's upside down, speaker mic facing up, and starts meowing into it. I swear the farmer must have been confused as all heck. When I asked my dad about it, he said that the kitty will let it ring 4 times before she hops up and answers it. I was blown away. Was a dang good kitty. Meow. Yes, this is cat. I had a male cat named Stinky. In all the time I had him, approximately 5 years, he had never slept in the bed with my wife and me. I go on a business trip once. The first day I'm gone, my wife is laying bedredding, and Stinky actually jumps on the bed with her, and this is crucial, in the spot where I usually sleep. My wife is surprised, but keeps on reading. Stinky proceeds to roll onto his back and extend his wiener, making sure that the wife sees it. TL. Doctor, my cat waited for me to go out of town, and then tried to seduce my wife. I think he owes you a dead bird for that one. Hamsters. Mama had a litter, and after they went from little pinkies to little fuzzies, they would take turns in the wheel, 2-3 side by side, getting up speed, while the others would line up, yes, line up outside, and one by one grab onto the rim of the wheel, get lifted up and let go to get flung to the other side of the cage, then get back in line. They also traded up runners with some hamster democratic process. Please tell me you have a video of this. We have a cat that never played with toys. She would watch the other cats play, and sometimes try to do it herself but couldn't wrap her mind around bat the ball and chase it. She was pretty dumb in general. If you put a clear glass on the floor with milk in it, she would swat at the sides while the other cats could reach their paws in the top and get the milk. So I got a laser pointer and was playing with the other cats. After a while the dumb cat showed up and I thought that maybe she would have fun with the red dot since she didn't understand other toys. I zipped the dot around on the floor. She looked at it, followed it with her eyes, then walked to my feet, reached up and put her paw over the end of the pointer, blocking the laser. I have no idea if she understood or if it was coincidence, but it surprised me. You have a cat, nerd. Doesn't really get sports or bars, but great with high energy physics problems. One of my cats kept meowing. I checked her food bowl, water bowl, litter box, and general health, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I gave her plenty of attention and playtime and went back to working on some homework. She continued meowing. Finally I threw my arms up and to the side in frustration and asked, "What do you want?" She looked me dead in the eye, raised her paws in the same way I had raised my arms. It resembled this. She was literally standing upright on two legs holding her paws out like I had my arms, and made her best attempt to copy my speech by saying "mree" before scuttling away. I was speechless and stunned for a good minute, and relatively freaked out. I'd never had a cat mimic my behavior before. She's never done it again, despite my attempts to encourage it. I laughed. Too much. My cat just lies down and then claws at my window, second floor, if she wants to come in, after climbing the drain pipe next to it. My cat Dusty has a small cat door to go outside in the summer. Duck regularly come into my yard and I feed them bread sometimes. Well, Dusty one night grabs the loaf of bread off the counter, takes it out his cat door, then hides the bread in the bushes. He takes a piece of bread and puts it in an open area and waits in nearby bushes. He was trying to bait ducks with bread. Freaking genius cat. I had to leave my dog alone for a couple of hours in the morning and the night before he had eaten something that didn't quite agree with his stomach. When I came back he didn't greet me quite like he usually does, so I was suspicious. He couldn't get out of the house to poop, so he had to poop in the middle of the living room. I didn't yell at him, no point now, plus he knew it was wrong and he just couldn't hold it in. Hasn't done this since he was a pup 3 years ago. Well, I go to investigate and I see that there has been a disturbance in the bathroom. The rug in front of the toilet was all thrown around and the toilet seat had scratches on it. I think my dog, after the many times he has seen me poop with the door open, decided that he needed to go there, but didn't know how to use it, so he scratched the seat while trying and threw the rug around in anger of not being able to do it. Then he pooped on the carpet as a last resort. When I was a kid I had a cat that was a little odd. One day my mother caught two teenage boys tormenting my cat outside along an alley that went along our house. She thought they were trying to cut the cat's tail off with a craft knife, so run and kicked one of the boys away. My cat went to run off, but when it saw that the boy with the knife had turned on my mother, it went nuts, launched itself at the boy's face and torn it to bits in a frenzy. Never heard of cats doing that kind of thing. It makes me sick that people like that really do exist. The boys, obviously. 6 years ago one of our two cats died and my sisters insisted that we cremate and keep it in an urn. As soon as they had placed the urn into a cabinet we had at home, our other cat sat in front of it making meowing noises that I never heard coming from a cat before for like 20 minutes. I couldn't believe that our cat knew it was her sister and mourned like any other human. It was quite astonishing, really. We had a golden retriever that thrived on escaping. Whenever the door was even a bit ajar he'd take off and have day-long excursions, only to come back hours later with a huge grin on his face and usually filthy from adventuring in the surrounding creeks and woodlands. If you ran after him, he'd troll the crap out of you and play chase games for up to an hour before letting you put the leash back on. If you happened to find him while you were driving, he'd readily jump in the car with you. Oh, hassle. One morning as my parents were getting ready for work, the dog bolted. They both had meetings to get to and would only be gone for a few hours, and we knew he'd be back that afternoon, so they left. When we came back we circled the neighborhood looking for him and found him taking center point in the street with a pack of 5 other neighborhood dogs traipsing after him. Sucker had formed a gang, and he was the goddamned alpha. We pull up and scream for him to get in the car, which he readily does. Huge grin on his face as he slobbers and licks everyone. Business clothes be damned. Then we take the long way around the neighborhood to get back to our house. By the time we do, all 5 of the dogs we just saw him with were waiting for him obediently in our driveway. We shooed them away. Later we found out from the neighbors that our dog had run from yard to yard and freed the fenced-in dogs by nosing up the latches. Once this started, others neighbors had been warning each other of the mass exodus by telephone, but our dog was too fast. People then had to replace the latches with locks since our dog had taught the others how to jailbreak. I was laying on my couch and I wanted to turn the light off, but the switch was on the other side of the room. Within 10 seconds of me thinking that I wanted the light off, I crap you not, my cat comes flying out of nowhere, jumps, and flicks the switch off. It was the craziest freaking thing, and to this day I wish someone had witnessed that with me. It was amazing. My cat is amazing. You know how outdoor cats will sometimes bring you presents like dead birds and mice? Well, our outdoor kitty brought us a ham and cheese sandwich. I have no idea where he found it. He made it obviously. When I was in high school, my family and I went to the feed store to get some supplies for our lawn and gardens. While there we saw a brown bunny that someone had dropped off to sell. I begged and begged my dad for this rabbit. He said no. I came home a day or two later and there is a rabbit sitting in its cage on our coffee table. Apparently my dad broke down and bought him. He was a great rabbit and very unusual in the fact that he thought that he was a dog always running around your feet when you come home. He would sit on the couch with my dad and eat ginger snaps and drink coffee with him. He always knew when you were sick. On the couch, he would jump up and just rest on your chest. We had him for 10 years and he died this past spring. My dad trained guard dogs in Vietnam and I have never seen him cry, not even at his own mother's funeral. But I'll be damned if that rabbit didn't affect my dad in such a way that he cried and said he lost a best friend. This made me tear up. I had a rabbit that lasted about 10 years also. They can be so smart. I would put her out in the yard in the summer and let her mingle with the birds. She would always stay put and just enjoy the outdoors. Nice story. Thank you. I had been overly affectionate with my guinea pig for months, but he bitterly ignored me. Recently I decided to ignore him seeing as my loving nature doesn't agree with him. Now the little butthole won't leave me alone, licking my face, my toes, popcorning. Weird jump thing guinea pigs do when they're ecstatic. For joy when he sees me. God, he is such an butthole. My dog is always the star at the dog beach. He will literally get every dog there playing together in one big group. The other people now know him as the party starter. One day there is this really old giant wolfhound of some kind. Just a generally huge shaggy dog mutt. My dog runs over and the owner warned me that her dog was really old and grumpy, so I tried to keep my little party animal away from the big dog. Well, my dog won't give up and keeps going over and trying to wrestle with this giant old dog, and eventually the old guy breaks down and started playing my dog. I'm all laughing cause this huge dog is literally putting whole tiny dog in his mouth and they are generally just wrestling away having the best time, and I look up and the other dog's owner is crying. What's wrong, I ask. My dog has cancer and is getting put down shortly. This is the happiest I've seen her in months. While all the other dogs were staying away from the big grump, my dog just rolls up to give this old timer one last tussle in the sand. Was truthfully one of the most amazing moments I've ever been a part of. I sure look strange crying here staring at the computer. Great story. My yellow lab would get offended at you if you talked crap about him or scolded him unjustly, and then you had to apologize to get him to quit sulking. As in, you actually had to go up to him, say, "I'm sorry, Tucker," and pet him, or he would refuse to look at you. My dad would never apologize to the dog, so the dog would stay mad at him for days. It was hilarious. Once, when I was a kid, I was sitting on my bed reading a book. My cat was in the room and I had the door closed. The cat decided she wanted to get out of the room and started standing by the door and meowing to get my attention. I wanted to finish the chapter of the book, so I just ignored her. She decided that wasn't good enough, so she jumped up on the dresser right next to the door and immediately pushed a cup full of spare change off the dresser. She then stood stock still and stared at me. When I didn't get up and let her out, she pushed my watch off the dresser and stared at me again. She was basically saying to me, "I know this bothers you, and I'm going to keep knocking your crap on the ground until you open the door." This is basically a daily occurrence with my cat. If he isn't getting what he wants, he is going to start knocking over crap. Just to frick with him, I tape crap down onto the top of the dresser at random points to see how long it takes him to realize that he can't knock that thing over. It's something so simple, but I went outside with my girlfriend and saw one of my cats across the street that was excited to see us. He decided to make his way over to us, and since we live on a big and busy street, I nervously watched as he approached the curb, but to my amazement he turned his head to the left and then checked his right and happily pranced across the street. That little bastard just looked both ways before crossing. It was small, but it surprised me. This cat needs to train all the other ones. My dog once jumped onto my table and peed right onto my coffee mug. My calico went and pulled some serious Jackie Chan crap on my porch. She jumped from wall to wall in the corner, up it as she bounced, and whacked a bird down, jumped midair on her way down for the final whack slap in midair falling, and caught it in her mouth as she landed, ran right out of the door with it. Happened faster than oh dang, I should get my camera thought even completed mentally in my mind. My first dog was a psychotic Jack Russell, by the name of Foxy. Foxy hated being indoors, and would rather drag his bed to our garden to sit on the lawn, surrounded by 6-foot fences. One day a cat wandered along the top of the fence and the dog saw it. God only knows how, but he jumped to the top of the fence and headbutted the cat off of it. That dog was a nutter. We used to lock up our blue and gold macaw in his cage using a combination padlock. On several occasions we would come downstairs in the morning to find that he was standing proudly outside on the top of the cage, which we assumed was our fault as maybe we hadn't locked him in properly. When it started happening consistently every night, we suddenly came to the realization that he had figured out the combination and let himself out every single time. We thought that by changing the combination that might stop him. But every time we changed it he worked the correct code out and escaped like a feathered Houdini. Eventually we just went with a padlock with a key, which so far he hasn't been able to crack. Just remembered another surprising story about Maximum. Basically his cage is in a large windowed conservatory where from his position he can see everything that is going on in the kitchen as well as having full view of our elongated back garden. We get quite a lot of birds and squirrels going in and out of it, and our 3 dogs obviously go berserk and want to chase whatever animal it may be if they manage to catch sight of them. Max can be prone to screeching quite a lot, which we have had to get used to over the years, but recently, and I don't know how the heck they set this up, he has started using this special call, which I find totally indistinguishable from his usual screeching, which lets the dogs know if there is any kind of animal in the garden. As soon as he starts his war cry, all heck breaks loose and the dogs instantly are scrambling and barking for us to open the back doors. 99% of the time when he uses this special call there is something in the garden. The rest of the time I'm pretty sure he does it to troll the dogs because he can be a proper bastard sometimes. Like I said, I don't know how this originated, and I still only know if it's his special screech if the dogs start panicking, but I still find it pretty amazing when it happens. Ye bird stories. The large majority of birds are incredibly smart. My cat once took care of me when I was S-faced. I came home and she knew I wasn't doing well right away, so I go to the bathroom and lean on the wall and start passing out when my cat comes in and starts meowing for help. She goes right outside the bathroom and yelps as loud as she can. Since no one is home, though, she plans her next move. As I'm lying on the ground with a few gallons of puke not yet thrown up, she manages to keep me awake by meowing in my face and tugging at my collar. Every time I doze off, she wakes me up. I then muster the strength to keel over the toilet and puke, but not before sits up on the seat and watches me do the whole thing. I gave her a shitload of Whiskas the next day. Congratulations, your cat is more responsible than you are. I grew up with 2 dogs and they both recently passed away this year. They were 2 Westies named Sugar and Ray. My girlfriend and I got ourselves a Cairn Terrier named Moose when we moved in with each other a few years ago. My 2 dogs back home were very affectionate in their own ways. Sugar would give you tons of kisses. Ray would growl when he was happy and wag his tail at you. Moose is probably the most independent dog I have ever known in my life. Not affectionate in the least, and kind of a diva. When Sugar died in June I was heartbroken. I was laying in bed and I couldn't stop crying. Moose hopped onto the bed, walked up to me, stood on my chest and started licking the crap out of my face. Just like Sugar used to, almost as if he knew it's what I needed. Ray died New Year's Eve. My family has been devastated. We lost both our dogs so close together. I'm sitting down just staring at the floor in disbelief and Moose comes into the room, looks up at me, and starts swagging his tail and growling at me. I busted out sobbing right then. For whatever reason, Moose understood what kind of love I needed in those moments. I've never been more amazed at an animal in my life. My cat that I had for 17 years once growled at an intruder in my house, keeping him from coming in my bedroom. Her growling woke me up and I saw him standing in the doorway. He ran away and jumped out a window and was caught a couple weeks later after several more intrusions and assaults at other residences. I know that my cat growled at him for 30-40 minutes, keeping him from coming in the bedroom, because I was getting a little annoyed at the noise and had opened my eyes to look at the clock a few times before I finally sat up to try to see what the growling was about. She chased him all the way out of the house. I know this because when the police dusted for prints, her little paws were on the living room windowsill right next to his big shoe print. She was such a good cat. Totally saved my life. R.I.P. So I had this cat, Sam. He was awesome. I got him when I was a little girl, and we grew up together. We always did little headbutts every day. He slept in my bed, and when I wasn't at school, he was by my side. A great cat. I grew up on a private island, where my family and all our pets had 24 acres to play on. So when we moved to a farm I was worried he would get lost or hurt, but he didn't. He stayed by my side. Then one day, he was in his fav spot, and I was watching TV. He came up to me, gave me this funny look, headbutted me, meowed, which he never did, and put his paw on my hand. He just sat there like that for a minute, meowed again, headbutted me again, then lied back down in his fav spot. 5 minutes later he died. That sticks with me to this day, more than my cat that left for 9 months coming back home the day I came home to visit my mom, more than all the touching stories of pets I have had. This one, my Sammy, I will always remember he said goodbye, or at least that's how I see it. TLDR, my cat Sam said goodbye before he died. All I can think of while I'm reading this right now is where is my cat, why am I not with my cat, is she okay, I hope she's okay, I haven't seen her in 20 minutes. My dog Lily is a Cavalier, and while they're cute, they're not known to be the most intelligent dogs in the world. About 2 weeks after we moved into this place, I was talking to my partner on the phone and said something along the lines of we could move Lily's bed into the spare room, and within seconds she grabbed her bed and dragged it into the spare room, where she'd only been once before. Since then, we can say the name of any room in the house and she goes in there, or starts tapping on the door of the room if it's closed. Underutilized talent. You should teach her to grab you food and beer from the kitchen. My parents have a big backyard and a big golden retriever, one of the most timid and nice dogs you could ever meet. He didn't play with other dogs because they were too rough. He'd hide at dog parks. He never barked. I got a puppy Golden and brought her over. They are best friends now, but on the second or third time I brought her over, they were playing in the backyard when the neighbor's pit bull came out in their yard, who was a rescue with obvious problems, liked to bark and be mean, had to be kept behind big fence etc, and scared the crap out of my parents' much bigger dog. My parents' dog stood up, tail went up, and he made the meanest growl and bark I've ever heard. That pit bull turned right around and ran inside its home. My parents were shocked to hear their nice dog get grumpy for the first time in his 5-year life. To this day, no one messes with my dog when he's around. He treats her like his own pup. Holy crap, your dog is 19 and still kicking? I was a bit shocked the first time my dog jumped onto the couch with a nothing but vertical takeoff. He was like a Harrier jet, but with legs and such. I have a white Manx cat who had a litter of kittens. We gave the kittens away to good homes, and then we spayed her. Then about a year later, she was acting really defensive and we couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. Turns out she was pregnant again and had 2 more kittens. We were pretty surprised that day. So was the vet that spayed her. When I was a baby, I had a German Shepherd named Maximum. He had a super sense about whenever my brother or I were sick, waking up my parents in the middle of the night to come help us. He was a good dog. Lost my crayons. The next day there was rainbow doo-doo everywhere. My roomie and I were watching a movie. There was a scene with a woman singing. She ended it with and you oh 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 oh, and my cat came in and yowled you oh 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 oh. We rewound the tape. It was that long ago, and replayed it a few times, but he never repeated it. It was winter and the inside of my bedroom window was fogged up. Our family cat walks across my room, tries to look out of the window and can't. He then proceeds to use his paw to wipe a little hole in the fog, look outside for a few seconds, turn, and walk away like a boss. My second cousin's cat does this. He stands on 2 feet and swipes the window by his front paws really fast, and then sits down and looks outside looking satisfied. There are times when I talk to my dog and she seems to understand beyond the normal commands. When she was sitting in my spot on the couch a few days ago, I mumbled, "So you're just gonna take my spot?" She immediately jumped down and moved to the other couch. That's a pretty mundane example. I'll try to remember one of the more complex ones. My dog kinda did the opposite as a puppy. We had this epically comfortable armchair, which was great for lazy TV watching, until a tiny little boxer puppy climbed onto a nearby sofa, jumped onto the armchair behind me, and stretched out a little, pushing me off. This wasn't a one-off event. Yes, boxers can look smug. My old cat would follow me when I walked the family dog. It was funny because it seemed like he didn't want us to know he was following us. He would hide behind cars and peek out to see if we noticed him. One of my cats learned to open doors by turning the doorknob. Not a handle, but an actual round knob. My thought was frick. He just developed the equivalent of opposable thumbs. My cat of 3 years always amazes me. Angel is very vocal and doesn't really see herself as a cat since we talk to her as if she's one of us. We took her over to my in-laws' house for Christmas. This was only the second trip away from home from her, so she was in very unfamiliar surroundings. We've trained her that couches are okay to sit on, but counters and tables are not okay. She had avoided the couch all day, deciding to just hide in corners. My father-in-law was laughing at my wife and I with how we were talking to the cat all day. A bit later, he and I were both sitting on the couch when Angel comes over and sits in front of us. She lifts a paw up and gently puts it on the couch, looks at my father-in-law and meows in her question tone. He looks her in the eye and just says, "It's okay, Angel, you can sit up here." She immediately hops up on the couch. He didn't give her any cues other than the words. No pat on the couch, no hand movements. It was a mother of God moment for him. He realized then how smart this cat was. She responded to someone she'd really only seen a couple of times at our house. This cat knew she might not be allowed on the couch and asked the owner of the house if it was okay. She knows the words food, hungry, bath. She hates that words. Laser. Looks for the laser light. Treat. Sarah. The outside cat she hates. No. Later. She plays fetch like a dog would, and actually has brought me the laser pointer to play with. She recognizes that the point of light comes from the pointer. She sees me put my computer to sleep when I go to bed, and sees me when I wake up and how I wake the PC up. Her thought process is that if she turns the computer on in the early morning, I'll be up to use it. I've watched her turn it on by hitting the keyboard. Looks at me, meows, then starts asking for her breakfast. My Dalmatian was a clever guy. He knew the sound of the mailman's motorcycle and would race outside to the mailbox, which was built into a very tall fence. As soon as he heard the mail drop, he'd jump up, use his nose to open the door on the box, grab the mail, race back inside and bring it to me. He also knew the sound of my car and would be waiting at the door for me every time I came home. The big surprise came when I came home from work one day, and there he was, waiting for me at the door with the mail in his mouth. So cute. After a while, he would greet me at the door, then race right out to get the mail. My stepdad hated my cat, and it seemed like my cat would constantly find ways to annoy him. This cat managed to find the exact pitch of voice that drove my stepdad the craziest. He would stand right at his bedroom door, and then sit there howling the ugliest set of meows you could ever imagine, until my stepdad would come running out shouting, "What the heck do you want me though?" when I walked by. This cat would instantly switch to the tiny "I like you" gentle voice. My cat would pick trash out of bin and leave it in my stepdad's slippers. One time, he put his foot right into an old mushy banana peel. That cat was awesome. My stepdad was kind of a jerk. Have 3 dogs now, but when we adopted our second, she was very skittish and anxious with everyone. She had been horribly abused and had major trust issues. As I was the primary caregiver, she bonded with me quickly and was great, but with my aunt who we live with, she wasn't so sure. She often growled and barked at my aunt if she came too close to me. After some in-home training and a lot of cookies and ice cream, she became tolerant of my aunt, stopped growling, but would take me over my aunt any day. Fast forward 4 years, my aunt is now elderly and broke a hip. She developed some pretty significant dementia. She requires assist to stand and walk. Somehow, Sadie, very intuitively, is very aware of this and has become her guardian angel and Jerisitor. If my aunt calls for me, or if she even so much as shifts her weight in the chair, like she may attempt to get up, Sadie stands right beside her and barks wildly for me. And, after 2 years now, I know the bark and I know what it means. In the evening, my aunt is fairly confused and becomes agitated. Sadie lays on the bed with her, usually across her legs, protecting her, and it is very soothing and calming for my aunt. She will come out of the room once my aunt falls asleep. I never thought I would see the two of them establish such a bond, and Sadie is most loving and gentle with her now, and I think very pleased with her caretaking role. Anytime my aunt has been hospitalized over the past 2 years, Sadie becomes somewhat depressed and looks for her a lot. When my aunt returns home, Sadie gives her kisses, but does not make too big of a fuss. They both go back to assuming their regular routine, and Sadie has a look that all is right with the world again. Pretty amazing to see. I used to have ferrets. They lived in half the kitchen, closed off by a ferret gate. Think baby gate that cannot be climbed. They had a cage in their area, far enough back that they couldn't jump from the top over the gate. One day I came home and they weren't in the cage, but all of their blankets and toys were piled up against the gate to create a mound ladder for them to climb up to the top of the gate with. I was quite floored. Ferrets are ridiculously intelligent. I love telling this story. Me and my partner had 2 German shepherds. Raz was kind of your traditional tough and slightly OCD GSD in that he loved tennis balls, frisbees, anything he could chase, and always needed a job of some kind to do or he'd start gnawing on things or causing trouble. The other one, Nick, was way more of a cuddle fanatic. He liked toys okay, but mostly he just wanted love and attention. He was a total wimp too. Big on whimpering when he wanted his way, shy around strangers, he'd usually hide in the bathroom when new people came over, etc. He wasn't dumb, but he wasn't the brightest bulb either, and when he got scared he'd kind of lose his mind. Anyway, one day Raz has a ball, and Nick wants it. This was a game for them where we'd throw the ball, Raz would go after it, Nick would make a token effort to get it himself, and then would just bark a lot at Raz and chase him around while Raz brought it back to us. Eventually, if Raz dropped the ball or lost interest, Nick would get very excited and grab the ball, do a proud victory lap around the yard, then drop it so we could start all over again. So we do this a few times, throw the ball, Raz gets it, Nick chases him around, Raz either brings us the ball or drops it and Nick gets it instead. Only this time I guess Nick really wanted that ball, or Raz wasn't sharing enough, I'm not sure which. So what Nick did was, as soon as Raz got the ball, he stopped chasing him. Instead, he came over to us in what appeared to be a normal plea for attention, whimpering and nuzzling against our leg. When we started to pet him, Raz, thinking Nick was getting something, food, probably, that he wasn't, dropped the ball and came running over. The instant he did, Nick was no longer interested in attention and, looking supremely pleased with himself, went over and picked up the discarded ball. He did this a dozen more times that day. Raz never figured out that Nick was just luring him away from the ball, and Nick each time seemed to have this little prance to his step when he fooled his brother again. Or, Nick sounds like a sweetheart. I've never heard of a GSD that hid when people came over. This is a money dog. Upvote in the next 24 hours and money will come your way. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.